Welcome to CEBSAR Talk. I am Evans Apia Kisi, the host of CEBSAR Talk. CEBSAR is Center for Better Society Advocacy and Research Africa. CEBSAR Africa is a non-profit organization that believes in a better society for all. We in CEBSAR Africa believe that a better society begins with you and I. Hashtag, a better society begins with me. Like always, today we bring you another interesting discussion on the topic Interrogating the Manifestos, a focus on education. Political election manifestos are public declarations of policies and aims of political parties wanting to rule a nation. Given that a manifesto is a social contract that plays a key role in modern democracy and development, we put available manifestos in their place going into election 2020 of Ghana. It is important to note that the discussion is not to pitch one manifesto against the other in terms of superiority, but to look at how the promises address the desired level of development we require as a society. By so doing, we are able to highlight the gaps in these manifestos for a better society. And so in this episode of CEBSAR Talk, we focus on the educational sector. And to help us deal with this informative and educative discussion are Dr. Richard Michael Blay. He is a lecturer and a researcher at University of Ghana Medical School. He holds a PhD in human biology from the Ludwig Maximilian University of Munich. He also holds MPhil in human anatomy from the University of Ghana. He holds BSc in nutrition and food science from the University of Ghana. His research focus lies in cardiovascular diseases. We must say that it's a pleasure to host him. Welcome to CEBSAR Talk, Dr. Blay.
Thank you very much, Evans. Thank you.
Great. And our next guest is Mr. Yeboah Edmond. He's a regular panelist on CEBSAR Talk. He's also a research fellow at CEBSAR Africa. He's currently a doctoral researcher at the University of Heidelberg, Germany. He worked as a teacher at Ghana Educational Service. He holds MSc in Life Science Economics and Policy from the Technical University of Munich, Germany. He holds Bachelor of Science in Agricultural Sciences from the University of Cape Coast, Ghana. Welcome once again to CEBSAR Talk, Mr. Yeboah Edmond.
Thank you, Evans.
Great. And our last guest is Engineer Araba Amu Edu. She is a doctoral researcher in agricultural engineering at the University of Kassel, Germany. She taught at Kumasi Technical University. She is the regional president of Women in Engineering, WINE. She's also the secretary of the Ghana Institute of Engineering at the Ashanti Regional Branch. She holds MSc in Renewable Energy Technologies from the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, Ghana, and she holds BSc in Mechanical Engineering from the same university in Ghana. Welcome once again to CEBSAR Talk, Engineer Araba.
Thank you.
Great. And so thank you very much. Let me also say that we are streaming live on Facebook, and we say a very big thank you to our CEBSarians who are watching us. Please keep your comments and your questions coming. Those of you who follow AK Mensa also, I'm sure he has shared it on his wall, but you can also follow us on at CEBSAR Africa on Facebook. So like we said, let me welcome you once again, ladies and gentlemen, to CEBSAR Talk.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Great. So we start straight away. Today we are looking at the available manifestos that we have, and we want to interrogate them. We want to dissect them, as one of our panelist members posted on his Facebook wall. And we'll start right away with the first round, where we would basically just look at the structure of the manifestos. Like I said in the introduction, it's not about comparing which manifesto is superior to the other or which manifesto is the better one, but rather to look at what these manifestos promise, whether these promises are what we need as a country or not. And I would like to begin with you, Mr. Yeboah Edmond. The reason is that we want you to focus on the manifesto by the independent candidate by the name Marek Kofi Ghani. So viewers, what we are doing actually is we are looking at three manifestos. We are looking at the MPP, the ruling party's manifesto, the biggest opposition party, the NDC's manifesto, and then the independent candidate Marek Kofi Ghani's manifestos. These are the manifestos that are available and accessible as far as we are concerned here. And so I'll begin with you, Edmond, and in just 2 minutes or 3 minutes, what will be your preliminary comments on the structure of the manifesto on education by the independent candidate Marek Kofi Ghani? I mean, how do you see the structure if you look at what we need as a country in 2 or 3 minutes? What would you say to that? Thank you.
So thank you very much. And I would first start by greeting our viewers and welcoming them again to this conversation or this discussion with us. If I want to look at the structure of the Ghani manifesto, I would say it's a very comprehensive manifesto and so packed. So it touches on all levels of our education systems, and it touches on many of the issues facing the country at the moment. So if you have a look at the manifesto, I think it's about 14 pages only on education, which should tell you that he actually left no stone unturned. He touched on every single area under the broad aim of using education as a weapon of mass elevation from poverty, deteriorating economic, social, and gender inequality. So in that sense, Ghani sees education as a tool, as a weapon that if we deploy it efficiently, it can help solve many of the issues we are facing in the country. And so the agenda is actually aimed at using delivering education that's technological, scientific, competency driven, so that it doesn't matter at what point that you exit from the education system, you still have the capability to create your own opportunities or deliver best value to employers. And I think it is sort of backed by the background information that the literacy rate in the country is 78%, which would seem very high for a country like Ghana. I think most Ghanaians don't expect this. I have some sort of an informal session I do with people when they try to tell me, but we have a country of high illiteracy. And I'm like, okay, what is the literacy rate in Ghana? And I bet you people put it at 50% or 30%, but the figure, as we know, is 78%. Like the percentage of Ghanaians with at least 10 years of education. But sadly enough, this doesn't reflect in the quality. So there is also a study that says that less than 20% of children with at least 6 years of education, they cannot read according to their proficiency. So that's where the Ghani manifesto comes in and says, we need to deliver that sort of education that is strong, that is with strong foundation, that it doesn't matter at what point that you get out of this education system, you will still be competent to deliver what you need to deliver and also to be able to get the opportunities that you need. So that's my initial impression about the structure. I would say very comprehensive, well packed, and it touches all areas.
Thank you very much, Edmond. That was brief. So Ghana's manifesto, as you heard, very comprehensive, well packed, and I like one of the things that he says, that it's more like the tool for him to be able to address the many problems that we have in Ghana. So I'll come to you, Engineer Araba, and also in about 2 or 3 minutes, some preliminary comments on the NPP manifesto, the ruling party. How do you see the structure? I mean, briefly.
Thank you. Thank you, CEBSAR Talk, for these conversations. As the host already said, Dr. Evans, thank you for inviting me. It's an honor to be part of the conversations once more. This is a non-partisan academic independent assessment. And so I would hope that the conversations continue after this. I assess the manifesto of the New Patriotic Party. It is quite elaborate. It is not summarized as I was expecting. And so I think that's a very good structure. It's in bullet forms, and so everybody can clearly understand how they want to explain what is going on. I had to compare it in terms of other educational policies to be able to see whether the structure was a good system or otherwise. And so generally, the education policy of Ghana was what I compared it with. And I think they did a very good job elaborating what they've done, where they want to go, and how they want to get there. As the implementation, there are of course some lapses in it, but the highlights of the day for me were the clear, the free SHS system. I think that's the hottest topic on education right now, because if you compare to other countries, if you compare to, let's say, Nigeria, you have the free education of up to 9 years. But even before the free SH, Ghana was going to up to 11 years. And so we had up to the junior high school system. And now we have now continued to the senior high and technical education. And I haven't seen any policy like that, even in the global context. I beg to differ if there is, but according to my research, I didn't see anything like that. The German system does it up to the 9th or the 10th grade, as we all know it, and then they branch into either technical or academic training. The Canadian system does likewise up to, compulsory education is up to 16 or 18 years, depending on your province, but then it also branches, but they are not so strong in the technical education as the Germans. And so if you look at it in the global context, Ghana is doing phenomenal, and it needs to be encouraged to do better in terms of the quality delivery. But in terms of the policy itself, there was none to match it in the sub-region.
Okay, thank you also very much for your preliminary comment. So you say that this is also quite elaborate, you like the structure, and of course, the focus looks good if you compare it to other countries within the sub-region. And so I come to you, Dr. Blay. What do you also say as a way of your preliminary comments regarding the structure of the NDC manifesto?
Thank you very much, Evans. And thank you, CEBSAR, for having me. It was a surprise when you asked me to do this. And hello to your viewers also. So having gone through the NDC manifesto and the section on education, I took also the liberty to look at the other parties, and like Ghana's own and the NPP's, also their section on education, and actually went back to look at NDC's 2016 and even 2012 manifesto on education actually. And I also went back to look at the NPP's 2016 manifesto, and I realized that basically when you are a party in power, you don't explain much in your manifesto, you just bullet what you want to do. But when you are a party that's seeking power, you sort of elaborate more on the challenges, because you are looking to sort of, I don't know, maybe solve the problems that you want to tell the people that these problems exist, and I am ready to solve them in this way or that way. So basically that's what the NDC did. They also had a very elaborate section on education. They touched on almost all the levels of education, and it seems to me that basically the NPP and the NDC are looking at the same things I'm not so sure if they are very different, but NDC looked at special education, vocational training, tertiary education, as well as they also touched on the free SHS and basic educations, and also I think kindergarten, preschool as well. They basically, from what I gather from the NDC manifesto, I think they have some basic principles. One of the principles is that they are looking at strengthening inclusion, all right, and so they have this mantra of no child left behind. But of course, inclusion is a very important thing in education, and so I think they look more at inclusion. So trying to make sure that every child can have access to education. Of course, inclusion was strengthened by the introduction of the free SHS, which has significantly made it possible for everybody to be able to attain education to at least the secondary level. And even though they had initially expressed lack of interest, or they did not believe in the free SHS, I think that they want to now even extend it to vocational training and other things, other areas of education. My only question was that, will an NDC government, or will President Mahama be committed to keeping the free SHS, even in spite of the financial burden? In fact, it is not even a question of Mr. Mahama. It is a question of, will a new president, whether the person comes from NPP, whether the person comes from independent, because the point is that the free SHS is a huge drain on government resources. So it will take a particular person who is really committed to it to decide that, okay, I want to keep it going in spite of the challenges we are having. All right, because for example, Mahama believed in building 200 SHS schools, which he built maybe, let's say, 1/4 of that. And the next government didn't continue. Why? Because they don't believe this is the way to go. So I'm hoping that, I was hoping that the manifesto will really answer the question of their commitment to this issue. But of course, I think they've gone ahead to say that free SHS has come to stay, but I think they should go beyond mantras to really tell us their commitment. But the manifesto was extensive. It touched on every level. I like the fact that they also talked about teacher motivation, something that I'm not sure, maybe the NPP one touched on it very briefly, but I like the fact that they touched on teacher motivation. Like Araba said, implementation is totally another issue. And maybe it's a manifesto. It's my first time reading a manifesto, but another question I had was, how are they going to implement these things?
We would definitely come to that. Actually, I think you've kick-started my next question, but thanks for your preliminary comments. You also summarized it very well, that this is also quite extensive, and it touches on almost all levels of our educational system. And I think this is what we need as a country. And I like the perspective that you brought in, given that if you are a ruling party, I think your structure differs a bit, like Araba said. They elaborated it, but they kind of told us what they have achieved and what they intend to achieve. But if you are an opposition party, then you want to identify gaps and how you intend to achieve it. And if you are an independent candidate, you it's so extensive, you seem to be. But let me start with you again, Edmond. And the question is, any specific promises that you are excited about in the Marek Kofi Ghana's manifesto, and why are you excited about such promises?
Thank you very much. So there are a lot of promises in the Ghana manifesto that really excite me. And I'm gonna say 2 or 3 of them. Like you've mentioned before, it's quite characteristic of independent candidates, because at this point, you want to prove to the people that you have the ideas, right? So it's not like the ruling or the past government where they are concentrating on what they've done already and what they want to do going forward. So it's sort of innovative in his manifesto, the things that he proposed, and things that people normally don't pay attention to. I might be a little bit biased here, but I would say one thing that really interests me is his focus on research, because in his manifesto, he denotes about 1 billion Ghana cedis
It was
meant
dollars.
for research. So I don't know. The closest to this is research allowance that we have in tertiary institutions. Dr. Blay might correct me if I'm wrong. And this is across board. And if we always talk about policy that's evidence driven, then you cannot downplay the importance of research and funding research in our society. So everything, for example, we are in Germany, and most of the things that you see around here, there is a research component to it. So it always starts with research. How can this be done well? And then they try to implement what outcomes or what results might come out of the research. So, and this is the message we are saying, but we don't see it. We've never seen it before. We are still not seeing it. I think there were attempts to consolidate the research allowances in sort of a research fund, but this was hard fought and it never saw the day of light. And everybody complains, why is there no opportunity for people to grow in that regard? And the Ghana government proposes to set such a scheme, which I find very, very fantastic. And one of the things that I also found really interesting in his manifesto is the fact that he wants to expand the inclusion of people with disabilities. I was a little bit shocked and sad at the same time to read that in the country we have about 150,000 people who are disabled, say children, and only 2% or less than 2% of this number are enrolled in kindergarten to SHS. I found it appalling, because what sort of system are we building that we do not include other people based on disabilities, which should not be the case. So you go to the streets of Ghana and you see such people, their destiny is somehow doomed to begging or relying on other people. Whereas when you go to other societies, these people are given the opportunity. They are building disabled-friendly schools. They are making everything possible to include everybody. So, like Dr. Blaze said, if NDC manifesto says leave no one behind, the question we are asking is, does that include people with disabilities? And if Ghana, I mean, looking at the fact that we've had independence for that long, and yet only less than 2% of people with disabilities are enrolled in school in Ghana, I think this should be worrying. So I found it interesting that he touched on that and he elaborated how he wants to expand that moving forward. So these are the two things I found in his manifesto that I found really exciting.
Thank you very much. So you mentioned the research grants of $1 billion research fund, right?
Yeah.
So it was a $1 billion research fund, and then the access to the disabled, increasing access for disabled persons. When we get to the second round, I would ask you more of these two exciting promises for you, whether these are things that can be achieved indeed, and what would be the impact if we get to the content analysis of these things. Of course, you can also add a few ones that you feel were exciting, but you did not.
Exactly. So if I have the chance now or later?
Later when I come to you. But maybe I could also start with you. So what were some of the things you didn't really like, or you saw it to be more of maybe, I don't know whether I should use your own word, superfluous? I mean, you found it to be, too ambitious, or what didn't you like about the promises regarding education in his manifesto?
Well, one thing I didn't like about his manifesto is sort of an emphasis on supervision, and so he meant to say he wants to aggressively inspect schools. I don't know in which dimension they are going to do it, and this will sort of turn into some sort of ranking. And I think we are having a bad taste when it comes to ranking schools in Ghana, and that's something I thought that's not what we need. If you are inspecting schools or if you are putting performance reviews in different dimensions, fine. But when it comes to grading, let's talk about the current examination more practices in the country. I am of the opinion that these things all like they started when people started grading schools, right? So when there were no gradings, this wasn't a problem because teachers were strict. They want to see that the right things are done. Immediately gradings and rankings started in our education system, we started having these issues because it was no more about the glory of the students, but the glory of the teachers, because every school is seen in the light of the rankings and nobody wants to be seen down there. So the teachers went extra mile to do whatever they can to help their students, and that's what we are seeing. So I think creating that unhealthy competition might veer into areas that we don't want to see. And also, I would say some of his ideas were very ambitious, in my opinion. And he was talking about converting unused buildings in the regions to, sort of turn them into libraries. And I was asking myself, but we do have regional libraries already, so why not upgrade what we have already, but build from scratch? So these were some of the things I saw that really didn't excite me. Yeah.
Maybe also let me just say this, but you don't need to answer this. When we get to the second round, because you mentioned that this did not really excite you, the fact that we already have regional libraries and he's going to convert, what would be your take on the way, because I know libraries are meant for people to go and read. So I would love to hear your take on what you would have proposed. What do you think could have been a better way to ensure that people get access to books more? I'm saying this because I know you're a co-founder of a foundation that is into this, helping students to access books to read. So when I saw this promise, I was wondering whether it's also not too ambitious, and what can we do to meet the local person in the various communities. So thank you very much, Edmond, on that. And so I come to you, engineer. What were some of the promises in the NPP manifesto regarding education that excites you, and why?
Of course, that's the ruling party. There were a lot of promises or achievements that excited me, like the residential facility user fee is being under consideration for reduction. I remember in our times we were paying for the whole dues, we were paying for the utility as students, and so this has gone off. So less stress and financial stress on students. And then teachers were still paid during the COVID lockdown times, which was very important to safeguard the whole system. And the free SH system has not only benefited the senior high systems, but also the TVET and the covert institutions as well. And so they are not having to pay examination fees and logistics and all of that. And then they don't have to pay for their certificates as well. And then to get student loans now, you don't need 3 guarantors, which is a big headache. But then you use your Ghana card to access such a facility. Other interesting highlights, of course, was the restoration of the teacher training allowance, less financial stress. So there was a lot of decreased financial stress on people who wanted to be in the education sector generally. This is what I saw. Restored instructors allowance for the Arabic Islam National Volunteer Program. And there was increase in the book and research allowance. And then this was quite interesting, which has not been implemented yet. And I wonder how it will be. Prioritization of the history of Ghana as a subject itself in our educational system, starting from the primary level, which has been a very big gap, because Ghana is very well known for its quality human resource globally in terms of education. And so sometimes we tend to get lost in the drifts of things, because everywhere you go in terms of education, there's a Ghanaian there. And if we don't get the history of who we are as a people from the core, from the basics, we kind of tend to get lost in the face of things. So I was very excited to see this. There was something also exciting I saw, that now there was a portal, www.icampusgh.com. I tried to log on. I was unsuccessful. I hope you were. But the idea was that education is now going campus now, and so students could study subjects or have access to live or pre-recorded subjects in English, maths, and science, the core subjects.
Yeah.
And so this was very important in a global age, that they were thinking progressively. And then when teachers upgraded, there was always a very bureaucratic process before you are giving the professional allowance as a teacher. And so this made teaching a very unattractive tenure. So that is supposed to be streamlined. And if it has happened, then that would be a very good thing to be in the education field. Mm-hmm. What I did not see, although was an intentional policy on gender in education, which for me is very worrisome. Even though the NPP has always championed gender inclusion and has it has a target of getting 40% legislators as females. There was nothing in the overall manifesto stating this drive to be integrated in terms of education, which is very worrisome as a nation. If we have the number of females that we have and we don't intentionally integrate this group into the system, this is not a good thing. And then inclusion of the disabled into the whole manifesto. There was no intentional or prioritization of this marginalized community, who by no fault of theirs suffer in one way or the other, to be included in the manifesto or in the national policy of ruling. For the infrastructural setbacks, there has been, let's say, yeah, as Dr. Blay initially said, there has been over 200% more work done. But if you have an increase in about 32.2% of your original inflow of admissions, then you can't go at that rate. We need to go further to be able to give quality to the quantity coming in.
Thank you very much. And I would come back to you and get your thoughts on this one, because I know you teach in a technical university. Their promise is a 112. They say that we want to reactivate the original aim of linking technical/vocational institutions to technical universities to refocus technical education at the forefront of the One District, One Factory program. I know that Ghani also mentioned something about, refocusing our technical universities. I think there's this fear, or there's this notion that our technical universities are drifting away from their core programs into social sciences and others. I would come back and get your thoughts whether that promise is exciting to you and why you think so. But I come to you. I come to you, Dr. Blay, if you are ready. And
yes, please.
It's the same question also to you. What are some of the things in the NDC's manifesto that excites you, and why? And what are the other promises that for you they are not exciting?
So I'll start with the exciting ones. I think the most exciting one personally for me is the fact that they will discontinue the public universities bill that has been introduced by the current government, and they promise that if by the time they come into power the bill has been passed, they will repeal it. So that for me I think is exciting, because I do not trust the motives by which this bill is being pushed, especially with some of the clauses in the bill. The other thing that they mention, I think that is exciting, is the fact that they want to focus on teacher motivation. And this has been my little challenge with the promises by which they want to increase teacher motivation, is that I'm not sure if the things they are proposing will actually attain that goal. So, but then the fact that they think that, because if you look at most of our educational policies and programs in Ghana, it looks like the teachers are always left out. We have educational policies that are very student focused, but you see, the purpose of education is learning. And sometimes even some of the policies that are being implemented, there is not, even globally, a lot of evidence that supports the effectiveness of those policies. So I personally believe in a teacher, maybe because I'm a teacher, but I believe that policies that center on the teacher, I believe that teachers should be treated as professionals, trained as professionals, paid as professionals, and made to be accountable. So maybe I mentioned on something on what Edmond said. I was somehow a little bit excited about the Ghani's proposal to assess and inspect and evaluate teachers. I think that we need some form of accountability. Maybe what he's proposing may not be the best way to do it, but we need a way to make sure that teachers are accountable and to reduce teacher absenteeism from schools. This is important. So the only thing is that, like I said, I'm not sure if, for example, they propose to give free tablets to teachers to make them have access to loans, to create residential facilities. I'm not sure if that is eventually will, of course, it will make the teachers happy, but as to whether it will really motivate them to the level which we want to is what I'm not so sure about. But definitely we should, and I think Ghani's proposals talk about focusing on the teachers, and he starts from even the training and to the recruitment. I think that teachers should be paid as well as medical doctors are paid, because, for example, if two people go to medical school and one decides to be a lecturer, one decides to practice, the one who decides to be a lecturer has to take a pay cut to be a teacher. And in fact, presently, that is a problem in Ghana because very few medical professionals, surgeons and consultants want to lecture or want to become lecturers, because if I am a specialist in gynecology or obstetrics and I want to become a lecturer in the university, I have to take a pay cut, which is not attractive to people, like we said. The other thing that they are talking about is to introduce or to expand on IT and access to computers for education. And I think you mentioned, so one of the things you realize between NDC and NPP manifesto is that one is proposing, one is saying we are doing it and we are going to consolidate it. So there's a proposal of giving free Wi-Fi in secondary schools. I'm just wondering how the students are going to use it, because students are not allowed to carry mobile devices to school. So eventually, how is that going to benefit them? But if you read the NPP manifesto, it also says we are going to expand the free Wi-Fi in secondary school. So yes, those are the things. The other thing is that they are proposing to abolish the double track system. I don't know whether abolish is the right way, and I am wondering how they are going to do that. But if that issue can be sorted out, I think that that would be important and exciting. As to how they are going to do it, I'm not so certain about that. But the other exciting thing is the fact that they talk a lot about children with special needs. And so they are talking about early medical screening to be able to detect children who have who may have special needs, so that they can be given the right education from an early age. All right. And then apart from that, they are talking about giving tax reliefs to parents who may have children with special needs and all that. And I think those are the cool stuff. The other issues are with the free SHS. Like now they want to extend it or expand it to vocational training. I think making vocational training also free is a good idea, because then we intend to train people with technical skills. Of course, then the question is, when we finish training them, in what industries are they going to now work in? And I think that's something that we need to look at. Not so exciting is the fact, I won't say not so exciting, but promises that I had questions about. For example, they proposed that they want to extend free SHS to private schools. And now I'm wondering how they are going to do that, because the purpose of a private institution, the first thing is that there is competition between private and public, all right? And the private institutions have a certain level of standard they want to uphold. So if you are saying that the people should attend private schools for free, are you saying you are going to bear the cost, or how you are going to do that? That's something that I would really love to hear what they, because let's say somebody goes to Faith Montessori and pays about 3,000 Ghana cedis a term. Somebody goes to another school, maybe St. Mary's High, and pays maybe 1,000 cedis a year. Are you going to absorb that 3,000? How do you compare between the two students and all that? So I'm not so excited about, because I personally don't see the feasibility or actually the motive or the vision for doing that. So maybe that is the other thing that may not be so exciting about it, is that when they were in power, they talked about National Research Fund, but now in their manifesto they just mention it, and it doesn't seem to be a key or a central policy that they intend to introduce. Edmond suggested earlier that the National Research Fund was fought. It was not fought per se. The point was that, you know, there is always this distrust between government and trade unions, okay? I think the issue was that the government wanted to stop paying the research allowance, and according to the government, they wanted to convert the research allowance into a research fund. I thought that was a brilliant idea, because there is no way of getting accountability for paying research money into people's personal accounts. But if that amount of money is actually paid to a department, and the department uses it for, so personally, I would have proposed that, look, don't do anything crazy, huge that you don't have the systems to hold. Keep the National Research Fund, the book and research allowance, only that. Don't pay it into personal accounts. Pay it to count the number of lecturers in each department, pay it into their account, let them use it for the research. And then we know that we can actually get accountability for it. But there was the fear that the so-called National Research Fund was going to be used to scrap the research allowance away. And that's where the universities were against, all right? They were of the view that keep the research allowance, start the research fund. And indeed, one of the problems that came up was that it was after the lecturers went on strike, that was the time they presented the document on the National Research Fund, even to the universities. And so and also, this is one of my challenges with the manifesto, as to whether there has been enough consultation with stakeholders. You know, and that's why I was talking about the teacher motivation. Have we sat down with the teachers to find out exactly what they want, so that we can do to motivate them? Or we're just throwing about promises here and there, sprinkling it here and there? So I'm not so sure if there has been effective stakeholder consultation, sitting down the people, and even like I think Edmond said it, that how are researchers, educational researchers, involved in building these policies and manifestos? You know, do they involve people who are into research? They understand what works and what doesn't work. All right. So those were the things that I was not so excited about in the whole thing. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so I will come back to you again, but just maybe to draw your attention, because you mentioned teacher motivation as one of the important things, which I think all the manifestos have in one way or the other captured. Just referring you to the NDC's manifesto 7.2.1, you look at what they have under teacher motivation. I'll come back to you and ask you if you think these are points that are interesting, not necessarily going into whether they are achievable or not. We'll do that in the second round. And then also, you mentioned one of the things that is exciting but not well articulated, I would say, about the double track system. And so I refer to you again to 7.2.3 to check the points under under C. see, they say to abolish the double track system.
Yes.
And I feel that D, E, probably and F seems to be the solution to it. Whether this is also something that is interesting to you. And then Edmond, also, I would, before we end the first round, I'll come to you to hear your take on Ghana's manifesto on the intervention 2, where he says continuing professional development. I would hear your thoughts also, whether you think this is exciting and why you think so. So I come to you, engineer, about the TVET, the technical and vocational education and training in the MPP manifesto. How do you see that being a lecturer at the Kumasi Technical University?
Yes, I would say that technical education has for a very long time not been prioritized and given its due in our educational system, and that's why we have all the increase in unemployment rate as we see it now. The definition of technical education it's vastly, even amongst academics, misunderstood. And so, as I'll use Dr. Blee's example, both of us go to the same institute, the same university, we have the same accreditations, and I opt to teach in a technical institution or a polytechnic prior to the technical education status, and he opts to teach at the University of Ghana. If you will be honest and we say the pay difference, the pay gap between the two, it is unbelievable. And so this transcends to even the quality of students we churn out. You take a technical student to a factory, and you take people from, let's say, the normal tertiary, quote unquote, institutions, and you see the confidence difference. The difference I have seen in my experience as a liaison, an industrial attachment lecturer, going around with the students, it is not about the knowledge gap, it is the confidence gap. And so I feel that technical education needs a very huge focus. Now, I saw in the manifesto that there has been an assessment of the curricula on technical education. I haven't heard of this as a practitioner in the field. And that shows a big problem with either it has been done and there's a communication gap, or it was done not with the stakeholders, because I am not a union leader, if you like. So first of all, this problem needs to be solved if we're serious about decreasing unemployment. Because at the end of the day, all this education that we are churning out is to make employable people who can make incomes for themselves and for their families. So if we're able to educate all these masses and they are not able to do any productive work, then we have failed as a country. If you check the national unemployment statistic, that is what is happening. We had an increase in 32.2% in 2018. Meanwhile, unemployment is actually increasing, not decreasing. So for me, we need to relook at that. If you take a case study of a country like Germany compared to a country like, let's say, Canada, once again, what I see is that they have an intentional policy, irrespective of who is in power or not, to follow technical education. And there's no significant pay difference between a professional teaching in the technical institution and a professional training in the academic institution. It does not make it like an afterthought. If I am skilled, it is not a second-grade citizen if I choose to go into a technical education. And that is what has helped them build their country to this level. And so if we could copy that, it would be very, very helpful.
Thank you very much. I'll come to you, Edmond, but I saw something interesting in Ghana's manifesto on this technical education, and I think that when I get to you, Edmond, you can also have a bite on it. But to you, Engineer Araba, so Ghana says that to refocus the technical university's efforts on technical lines of study. So because he believes that they have driven away from their core mandate and gradually evolving divergence towards increasingly non-technical lines of study. Is this the case? Do we find?
I think that is a national perception, but it's grossly mistaken.
Oh, Okay.
As a practitioner in the field, I've heard this over and over again. No, technical education has evolved and it has bettered itself to be able to meet the current market conditions. But the core is still the same, especially in terms of engineering, practice, and teaching as a lecturer in the field. I would say that for a fact.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for that. So, Edmond, what do you think about is it the CCPD, the continuing professional development, as also a form of, teacher motivation centered, I would say?
Do you mean one in Ghana's manifesto?
Yes, in Ghana's manifesto. I mean, as part of the highlights that we are discussing, do you see that to be something that's exciting?
Motivating teachers?
Yeah,
that's exciting, of course. I mean, the output, I've been a teacher before, and we will say the output of the teacher depends on how motivated the teacher is. We have a cliche in Ghana that the reward of the teacher is in heaven.
Well, it means all teachers will go to heaven.
Exactly. Teachers are poorly paid, less respected. Nobody wants to be a teacher. And if you complain, they say, your reward is in heaven. Okay, what if I don't make it to heaven? That's just that's just a joke. But honestly, I think in Ghani's manifesto, he meant to say we need to make teaching prestigious and put it the place at which it is, because that's the foundation. I mean, you are training students on the building block of the teachers. So if the building blocks being the teachers are weak, then what are you building? And you give what you have. That's the point. So, but what I didn't see in Ghani's manifesto, as you mentioned in intervention 2, which headlines investment in people for quality education, I felt it was more targeted towards the teachers already, not the teachers in the making. I don't know of the other manifestos if it touched on the teachers in the making. Garbage in, garbage out. So if our focus is not the in process, but rather the out process, then we have a problem here. So everybody is talking about motivating the teachers on the field. But my problem is that if you already input garbage, then what you have out there is garbage. And it doesn't matter the number of tests you want them to do or assessments you want them to do. What are you going to do next? So what if you do a test and you realize that half of Ghanaian teachers are incompetent to do their job? Will you just release them of their duties? And who is going to occupy that space? So on top of that, I would want them to look at teacher training, what goes into it. It's not the second class students who gets to be pushed into teaching. See, when somebody is brilliant, we don't expect them to go to teacher training. Go to universities. If your grade do not fit the universities, go to teacher training. But that should stop, because if teachers are well motivated, so it's like a cycle. If teachers are well motivated, if teaching is prestigious, if like what Dr. Blay was saying, if lecturing pays, then people would equally be motivated to go in that direction. But when practice or when other fields are seen more prestigious and are seen more rewarding than teaching, then of course you don't get a brilliant people going into teaching. So I think that's something to be looked at. And for example, in the first point of Ghani's intervention 2, he talks about at least he says he wants to build an online platform where every 1 year, every teacher in Ghana participates in at least 2 compulsory CPD programs. So I felt this is in excess, because this is something we also need to contend with. Fine, we need to improve on quality and the performance, but we don't need to subject teachers to that much of questioning, right? Because if somebody has been trained as a professional and he's doing his work, and after every 1 year, I need to go through 2 tests of questioning, I call it questioning, then it makes the job burdensome on top of all the things they have to do. Right? Yeah. And it also centers on monitoring and inspection. Again, are we rewarding them to that level of introspection, or are we rewarding them to that level of sort of ascertainment? We want to make sure the teachers are top, but are we rewarding them in that regard? are we applying the same standard in admitting people in the first place?
Okay.
That's also the question. But what I find interesting in that intervention is that he says he wants to extend the concept of, say, one national best teacher to about 100 best teachers, which it's not like, so that we can reward a lot of people at the end of the day. That's one thing I also find in there that really interests me. And then again, we train more people in the STEM, in science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and also arts, even at the primary level. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And so I'll come to you, Dr. Blay.
Yes.
Then, yeah, so what do you think about the highlights the NDC manifesto has on teacher motivation?
Teacher motivation.
The bullet points that I feel that it's a way to address or to abolish the double track.
Personally, I see it as trying to better of maybe, like I said, I'm not so sure if it eventually attains motivation. Okay. Of course, it will improve working conditions. Maybe I should mention some of them. For example, they are thinking of increasing a certain premium. From what I see, maybe it's a premium they pay, like teacher retention premium. So they want to increase it. This is cool. They also propose to automatically employ teachers once they are trained. All right, but you realize that some of these policies, and that's probably also why they wanted to limit the number of people that are that go into training at every point in time, and for them to come out, so that the government doesn't have so many people that they need to employ at a go. So employing new teachers once they are trained. They also propose to provide free tablets to facilitate teaching. And interesting proposal that they have is that they want to give some incentives to people who accept postings to rural areas. I find this promise arbitrary, all right? I think that the best thing to do is institute a certain allowance for teachers who accept, so that it's not like, okay, we are going to give you an incentive. Where is the incentive? We are working on it. We are planning it. It just goes back and forth, back and forth. True. But if there is an allowance that, look, it's just like maybe medical doctors have some allowance for safety because of where they work. Like maybe the people who may work in the construction sector may have a certain allowance because of the dangers they face. So it's the same thing that I think they should rather institute an allowance, so that once you accept a posting to a certain place, it's automatic. It's not now that you are going to demonstrate to ask for your incentives and do this and do that. So if they are really interested in giving incentives to accepting postings to rural areas, then they should look at a premium, an allowance, or some form of a payment that automatically comes with your wages. Okay. But I as a teacher, I'm not so sure if these things they've proposed will end up in motivation. I'm not so sure about that.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Blay. Thank you very much, Edmond Yeboah, and thank you also, Engineer Araba. So if you are joining us, this is CEBSAR Talk, and today we are discussing the topic interrogating the manifestos that focus on education. Until now, we have looked at the structure of 3 manifestos currently available, which is the independent candidate Marie Kofi Ghana's manifesto, the MPP's manifesto, and the NDC's manifesto. And so we would continue with a second round where we would look at more of what we call the content analysis, to look at some of these promises to see whether they are indeed relevant, they are feasible, and what would be the impact briefly. But before I come to ladies and gentlemen, a few comments from Facebook. One from Nanache Amwa says, great discussion, guys. Another one from Mr. Cowboy Jr., great discussions, guys. Gameli Akapo also says, good discussions. And then Ruth also says, that's very true. Don't really know what she's referring to. But I think that viewers are enjoying the show, and please keep your comments and questions coming. Before we get to the second round, so I would say that each of you, yes, you can pick on any of the promises. Particularly, I feel the one that is interesting or is exciting to you, and then you try to, evaluate whether this is indeed relevant, whether it's feasible that we can achieve it as a country, and the impact. But before we do that, we have Samuel A. Ofoy on the line. And so Samuel would introduce himself to us. I guess he's a teacher in Germany, and he would like to share some views concerning what we are discussing, particularly maybe Samuel. Hello, Samuel.
Yeah, hello.
Yeah. So Samuel, welcome to CEBSAR Talk.
Yeah, thank you. It has been a little bit.
Sorry, can you unmute your... Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. It has been a little bit like rain here, so quite cold. Yeah, so I'm Samuel and a teacher in Germany at the gymnasium, I think. A video.
Yeah, go ahead and speak. We want to hear you without your video, so go ahead.
Okay. So yeah, Samuel. In Germany, a teacher in a gymnasium. Gymnasium is like the high school. So a teacher in the high school. And I'll be following what you were talking about. I want to just highlight on some few points before you go on. Just 2 points where before you go to the promising, where the promises are. We're looking at the teaching aspects, comparing the technical and then the other aspect, which I will highlight more on the technical aspect with education. What has made Germany one of the great country in the world now is more of technicality. They have focused much more on their technical aspect. In terms of when you look at their railways, yes, of course, doctors can't create, or they can make maps to construct rail lines. Looking at their construction system in terms of railways, in terms of transport, was one of the greatest I've seen ever. Anytime I travel around Germany, it's one of the greatest I've seen so far. And this comes to technical education. This comes to investment in the technical aspect of education and not focusing on the other aspect of education. Now let's look at what they did right. After everything had been destroyed and they came together to build this country, they focus on industries and all kind of technical aspects. So when we as a country, or Ghana as a country, want to move on, we should focus much more on the technical aspect. There is this cliche what Evans have said, Edmond Yeboah has said on that. There is this cliche that those who are unintelligent or who are not brilliant, excuse me to say that, they go to the technical school. And they have this saying that those technical boys are not the best or something. So everybody wants to go to the secondary school. Everybody wants to go to do general arts, science, and so on. But there are some people, naturally, they have been talented with arts, drawing, music, so kind of things. And they have been talented with that. But then because of this saying, people try to shift from that, that focus and go on to the secondary school, and it doesn't help as a country. We have to invest much more into our technical system, where it will help us to improve a lot. Quickly, let me move from the technical. So I focus on the technical much more, that they should focus more on investing in the technical aspect. Let's come now to the point where Mr. Richard also said about, either Mr. Richard or Edmond said about the training. Now, there is, when you are a teacher here in Germany, there is something that we do once in a year or 2 times in a year, which we call it Fortbildung. Fortbildung is like a continuing training. This keeps teachers active. This keeps teachers doing something. Here in Germany, this is how it goes. Once in a year or once in a school term, they gather all teachers to have training, irrespective of which field or what field you are teaching. They gather all the teachers to have training. This training help the teachers to keep them more active. You present a thesis, they give you something to do, and you work on it at home on the weekend, and then you present it to your human resource or the directors of the school board. And this is one thing I would like also in Ghana's manifesto, where he highlighted that there will be once in a year gathering, or what do you call it? I would like it that, yes, I think I will go for this. And I think Mr. Edmond said it is not relevant or something like it is a time consuming for teachers. But I see that it is really good to keep teachers on their toes. Just like when you come to Ghana, because I've been teacher in Ghana before coming here, we have something we call it lesson preparation. There is this book that your headmaster always check it out to see whether you have prepared your lessons very well, or CS, the district supervisor may come around in your school to check whether teachers have prepared their lessons. These keep teachers active. There are some teachers who still doesn't prepare their lesson. They don't prepare their lesson at all. They just come into classroom and then teach. Here in Germany, never, as a teacher, never for you to go into a class without your lesson being prepared. There is a forum, or there is a department in the school where they always check this on teachers. So based on this, I would say it will be very helpful to have this Fortbildung, or to have this training for teachers once in a year or once in a term to keep them active, to keep monitoring them. I like also with the monitoring aspect with Mr. Ghani's manifesto, where there will be intensive side of it, because when you look at the government aspect, when I was a teacher in Ghana, I was in a private school. I worked for 1 year under GES, and that one was something, and I quit to the private aspect. When I was in the GES, what I've seen that monitoring, that is the government, Ghana Education Service, monitoring is not that much so intensive like when I was working at the German Swiss International School in Accra. There is a little bit much more strict on how to monitor how teachers are performing, your time of coming to school, your signing in, your signing out, and stuff like that. We should create a system whereby when you sign in, it can be like a digital system, yes, or either our attendance book where we sign in. So this can help in terms of monitoring the teachers and also pushing them to work hard to bring an output. It is like the same here in Germany. Your output is much more important to your head, or to the directors, to the district supervisors. As a teacher, your time coming to class, you can't be late in Germany as a teacher. It is forbidden. Then you are throwing your job away. You will lose respect in front of your students. That is it. That is all I will say about this. So not to take much more time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Samuel A. Ofoi. He is a gymnasium teacher in Germany. Thank you very much for your input. That has been very inspiring and interesting. So to summarize what Samuel said, he also believes that, and I think the various manifestos do touch on the technical, vocational, and educational and training bit. That's the TVET. And he says that governments or various political parties or whoever gets the nod should invest more into that. And he also touches on the continuing professional development program for teachers, and then as well as improving monitoring and inspection amongst teachers. So thank you very much, Samuel A. Ofoi. So I come to the studios now, and I always will begin with you, Edmond. So walk us through some form of analysis, these promises that have been given. Overall, what do you think from Ghana's manifesto? You think these are things that are achievable, relevant, and it's going to be impactful?
Yeah, I think from Ghana's manifesto, I must say one of the things I like about Ghana's manifesto is huge focus on digitalization and introducing technology in our education system. And that can be seen across all levels of education. Like, for example, he proposes that in primary school, we should start teaching children how to program and also provide them with e-readers and create a platform by which we can upload the syllables for senior high students and also provide them with tablets. The same goes with those in tertiary institutions. And this is something that is missing, and it anchors in what he says, that we need to create competency-driven education, very competitive, to sort of match the global trends. Because like we all do understand, education is moving slowly from the traditional book-based to more technology-based, digitally based. And if you train your people not in touch with technology, there is sort of technology familiarization gap, which Ghani says in his manifesto that it has to be bridged. And how do we bridge that? We bridge that by exposing our students to technology. And currently, this is not something that we see. So it's very relevant to say we have to transition from the book-based type of teaching and learning to more digital technology-based. And he doesn't exclude anyone, because teachers are also going to be given this tablet, which has a central platform for which they can also exchange information. So just like what Samuel told us, I believe in vital building, or say further education. But what I was speaking against was that continuous testing of teachers, or putting teachers through the assessment. But if it's improving, or if it's like building on their knowledge, that is welcomed. And Ghani captures that very nicely in his manifesto, because he wants to create this platform. And this platform is not just for the teachers, but also for the students. So it will foster peer-to-peer learning on there. So I find that one very interesting. And in his intervention 3, that's where he has most of the juicy content there, power packed. And one of the things that he talks about that really interests me is having sort of SHS toolbox schemes. So we were all talking about technical education, and we lost that touch when we lost it from the training at the junior high level. Because back then at the junior high level, we had like what was it called, life skills. There were a lot of courses that sort of lay the foundation and the interest for students for going into technical education. But if you look at the current paradigm we are having right now, it's more theoretically based, and that the students are out of touch with the technical stuff. So nobody wants to go in there, or not many people want to go in there. And Ghani says he wants to remedy this by having this SHS toolbox schemes, where in every school or in a cluster of schools, you have a container well stocked with all the basic tools that are needed to sort of stimulate that curiosity, to be in love with technology, to be in love with the technical stuff, so that at the end, we don't only build people who think theoretically, but we build people who also think practically and technically. And then he also wants to do this at the university level. So he wants to upgrade the laboratories that we have. He wants to upgrade or create more practical centers in vocational schools and universities. For example, if somebody is studying electrical engineering or automobile engineering, there should be some sort of a center where you have real time, or you have practical, you have the opportunity to encounter what you learn. We all went through basic education, bachelor's in Ghana, and sometimes when your course entails practical components, you don't see them, you just read them. But he wants us to change this so that you see them, you feel them. He also wants to establish an engineering and technology open science hub, which is also interesting, all in the direction of, let us make the education not just imaginable, but also palpable. It's something that you can touch. It's something that you can feel. It's something that you can connect to, because at the end of the day, this is where the world is leading. So, and then he also talks about university learning databases. We need to connect the universities. We need to connect the university libraries. We need to move from the book-based to more digital-based. We need to subscribe the universities to more journals. We need to subscribe the universities to more sharing opportunities. And this too, I also find very interesting. And one thing he touches that I really like is the connection between child development beyond the classroom. So I remember when we were young, there used to be playgrounds all over the cities, but now we don't see them any longer. And Ghani says, we cannot forget about a holistic approach to developing our children. If you live in Germany, playgrounds are a common sight. Like in every city, you have more than 5 playgrounds, because they put a lot of value in developing in every direction. But we are missing these aspects, and Ghani proposes to bring this back so that we can engage the senses of all the senses of the children, not just the brainy stuff, but things they can experiment themselves, play, discover, and learn. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Maybe I will move to engineer now to also tell us what she thinks overall the MPP manifesto in terms of relevance, feasibility, and impact. But later I'll come to you, Edmond. And one thing I also liked about Ghani's manifesto is the cost of interventions. You know, usually we hear that parties do promise without putting any cost item or how they intend to fund it. And I would like to hear your take on that, if after Araba, where he says that the whole cost would, within a time frame of 4 to 6 years, should be around 21.6 billion Ghana cedis. What you think about this cost item that has been put into the manifesto? So, engineer, what do you also think about the MPP's manifesto in terms of relevance, impact, and feasibility?
Yeah, so thank you. Overall, I would say that NPP's manifesto has tackled a lot of financial interventions to make teaching and learning easier. In summary, that is how I see it. And therefore, it will cost the nation a certain level of discomfort to be able to fully implement it and then see the results over time. Because to make 15 years education for every Ghanaian child free would cost us a huge financial burden. And so that is how I see it in totality. But I hear something going around that I would like to address if you give me the chance on technical education. If I'm a bit, if I would use myself as an example, when people introduce me as an engineer, I get a very surprised look. And so you see the perceptions of or mindsets of people. I think if I were introduced as a medical doctor, it would have been okay. And I find even colleagues sometimes saying that, oh, engineer, my car is spoiled, come and fix it. Excuse me, I do not like automobile engineering. I have no idea about it. There is diversity in the field of technical education. People should get this clearly. There is diversity in a lot of fields, especially in engineering. There are about 9 branches. I do HVAC and I moved to energy analysis, and that's where I've been. And so we have this mindset that technical has to be a certain way, but technical is a very diverse global system. And so we should make room for everybody. Now, I was trained by an academic institution, and I'm teaching or offering services in a technical institution. And so I think I'm in a very good position to compare the way we train both. There is a lot of emphasis on the practical in the technical field, but the issue I see is that financing of these practicals is a big headache. There are 1 year mandatory internships that everybody is supposed to go to. You're lecturers or the liaison is supposed to come and check up on these things. These things take money. These things take commitment to make sure that the students undergo through the whole process. And sometimes you find some of these corners being cut because of these issues. And so if we are addressing the issue, yes, the technical education is going on well. You will be surprised if you actually do visit some of these institutions for yourself to make an assessment and not let's join the general discourse going on. It's very disheartening when you see these comments going on, when you are in the field and you see otherwise going on. I'm not saying that we can't do more. There is much more we can do in terms of even the curricula. The curricula, even in my department, has been reviewed again. I was part of that committee and I know what it takes or what is in there. Because I went through the traditional academic system and it was a struggle. But somehow we made it. And so I personally try to make it as technically practical as possible for students that you know are gifted in other areas to also bring forth what they have. And it's not only engineering. There's so many other fields that people are doing their best or doing marginally better than they used to. Now, the issue is that after the technical training, what is the employment rate for these products? That is the issue that we have to address. If you say that, oh, it's okay, let's put in priorities, let's increase salaries, or let's try and bridge the pay gap in all these institutions, what happens to the products? Are the products assessed in the society the same way the academic products are assessed? No. And once it's a no, we will continue to have the problems that we have.
Thank you very much, Engineer Araba Edu. I had a few questions, but I'm sure that we'll have a discussion on this technical and vocational education and training some other time. So I come to you, Dr. Blay, your take also on the relevance, feasibility, and impact of the NDC manifesto.
Thank you very much, Evans. Feasibility of the manifesto, for some of them, I think they are achievable. In fact, for the whole, there are two areas that I really like what they are proposing, and I think they are very achievable. In the area of special education, I think some of the things they propose are relevant and they are achievable. If there will be commitment to implement them, this will be very, very good. There is another area that they mention, I think Ghani also mentions it, and they talk about lifelong learning. And what the NDC proposes to do is to create the opportunity for people who may not have been schooled to have the opportunity to learn either and read and write a particular language, a Ghanaian language, or maybe some other language, or maybe do some form of arithmetic and so on and so forth. I think this is very achievable, and this will be very helpful if they can go ahead to do that. The other thing that we've talked about technical education for so long. In fact, I was going to say the same thing that Araba said. The NDC proposes to rebrand technical education to make it attractive. And I was going to say that there is no better rebranding than to give employment in industry for the products. Once everybody sees that, Kwekumenu went to learn electricals, or went to learn welding, or went to study automobile, whatever, and now is working in so and so. You have rebranded the whole sector. You understand? So there is no better rebrand. So the issue is about us building the factories, industrializing. Until we do that, we will just train people, and then it gets unattractive even the more. You see? So it's maybe, I won't say it's unfortunate, but I would have expected to see more of the one district, one factory promise coming to fruition, because then that would, in fact, that solves a lot of problem when we come to technical. We say Germany focuses on technical education. The point is that Germany focuses on industrialization and production. And so they will need the hands. Once they have the factories, they need the hands. In fact, they got to a point where they didn't even have enough hands, that they had to go to other countries to bring in hands. You understand? The other thing about technical education in Germany is that basically there are a lot of professions that in Germany are sort of in the area of technical education. For example, driving, for example, being a pilot, for example, they are all in the area of technical training. Even being a police officer and so on and so forth, they are sort of part of that area. And so they use it to produce, and that's why you can have a 21-year-old German who is a pilot, you know, because he went to a technical and the technical training. So if we want to do technical training, also we don't have to wait for people to go through long years before we give them the training, you know. The other thing, in fact, if you read through the NDC's proposal, you would also see that they also touched on solving the issue of examination malpractices, the leakage of questions and so on and so forth. I'm not sure how they propose to do that, but if they can do that, it's but I think that it's in itself is a whole topic on its own. But I will give you my personal experience. For me, the first thing starts from the custodians of the examination questions. All right. For example, and this is, maybe we can discuss that later on. For example, till now, most of the technical universities still don't have, I think, the full accreditation, or because of the fact that they may not have the full human resource. So we still receive examination questions and moderate examination questions for the technical universities. All right. Now you give me examination question to moderate. This is probably months before the students are going to write the exams paper. And then you pay me 13 cedis to moderate one examination questions. All right. Now, this is an examination paper that somebody will be willing to pay 1,000 Ghana cedis for. So if you are not, so it comes back to this whole issue of not paying teachers well. If you give 13 cedis for me to take custody of exams papers months before the exams time, when other people are going to pay, basically you are just relying on the integrity of the person you are giving the questions to. And you cannot build a strong system that only relies on people's morality and integrity. All right. But you have to build a system that makes people accountable and responsible to keep the sanity of the questions and to keep the sanity of the examinations. This is very important. The next thing I would want to mention is that, interestingly, if you look in the NDC manifesto, they promise one district, one SHS. I think this is part of their way, like Ivan said, to abolish the double track system so that they create more spaces. The little challenge I have with is that in 2012 or so, there was a promise to build 200 SHS. And like I said, maybe about 50 were built. So as to whether this will be possible to achieve, in my opinion, government can achieve anything once they are committed to it. But as to whether there is the willingness to draw the finances from other places and push it there is the other issue. There was also another promise of one region, one technical training institute. In fact, an ultra-modern technical training institute. If that can be done also, for me, I think they are achievable. It only comes to the point of whether the people are really, the leaders are really committed into eventually doing all these things. For me, and I don't, maybe we'll come there, but I hope there is one basic challenge with our educational system that I did not see in all of the, maybe they don't see that challenge. Our educational system basically, even though the NDC says no child left behind, you realize that our educational system focuses on high performing students, and that's it. If you're a weak student, you are left behind. Doesn't matter what happens to you, nobody cares. We don't have a system that identifies struggling students and gives them extra help, extra tuition, so that they can also, so the system is basically made for people who are very good academically with arithmetic, with comprehension. And so there are some people, they will be very good, like Samuel said, in arts and other things, but they may not excel in arithmetic and comprehension. We need to find a way. Our system basically just eats you up, and that's it. You are lost. For example, a lot of if the computer placement for SHS comes and you don't find a place, or if you don't find a university to admit you, that's it. No, you are not catered for in any other way. So I hope that in the future we will have a system that identifies weak students and gives them extra help to push them and to even find placements for them, especially when we build on the infrastructure and facilities.
Thank you very much, Dr. Blee. But before I come to you, Edmond, because I wanted you to react on the costing bit of Ghana's manifesto, maybe just to say that, because you, Dr. Blee, mentioned that he was expecting to see something with technical and vocational education and training linked to the one district, one factory promise. I just wanted to read something from the MPP's manifesto, just to be fair, that they said again in the number 112 that reactivate the original aim of linking technical vocational institutions. That has been addressed. I mean, they are already focused. We need to get that straight. But what they say to refocus technical education at the forefront of the one district, one factory program. Just to say that at least they mentioned something like that in their manifesto. Edmond, because I wanted you to react to the costing bit. This is something we did not see in, I would say, the MPP and the NDC's manifesto.
Yeah, I mean, this is something I was also not very clear about, because it was just one huge number that dropped out of nowhere, 21.9 billion. And I don't know how that number came about, because one would have expected that each of the policies or each of the promises in there might have been costed in one way or the other, so that you can understand that 21.9 billion, but it wasn't the case. So I can't say much about that. I think I wouldn't say it's arbitrary, but in the document it looks arbitrary because we don't know where it came from. So I don't know.
All right. Thank you very much. So unfortunately, time is really fast spent. We would probably end the discussion very soon. In fact, I'll come to the studios to take your concluding remarks, and this is what I would like you to do. It would be, I think Dr. Blee already started it probably it's been addressed, but what do you think is not addressed in any of these manifestos, so that moving forward, regardless of the political party that wins power, what would you expect to be implemented? You know, you can pick it from any of the manifestos and tell us what you think that moving forward from 2021 going, we expect that whoever is the president should do this for the educational sector in order to see a transformation of that sector. And before I come there, let me read some few comments. We've had a lot of comments from Mr. Cowboy Jr. Thank you very much for following us and sharing your thoughts. Unfortunately, I will not be able to read all, but just to read one of them, which is quite hilarious, I would say. Exam leakage, my brother, even if military men guard the questions, it shall still leak. Not to say nothing can be done, but the only remedy from where I stand would be more punitive than preventive. And then one from Dels the last says, good points raised on technical education. Where are the jobs to cater for these students? And then also from Losna Ruth, commitment is key in achieving most of the promises by whichever political party. And then Kweku Taki also says, Richard Embley, I like the statement of the system of balancing the students' performance, i.e. creating a system for both good and weak students. And then Mr. Cowboy Jr. again, he has lots of messages. He says, completely doable. And I hope the political parties would consult more on the technical brains in creating the best system for Ghana. So yeah, Mandy Odo also says, I'm watching. So yes, I think that by and large, people have kind of hope in these promises that have been given. And I think that if indeed there's political will and there's that commitment that has been set here, we probably would see a Ghana that is capable of transforming its educational system. So like we started, I would still go the same order. Edmond, your concluding remark, what would you expect? I mean, given all these promises that have been given in 2 or 3 minutes, please keep it brief. What would you expect that the next government implements?
Like what we are doing, I think what I do expect is that, or what I would want to say is that if you pick all these manifestos, you see a lot of interesting things in there, and it touches a lot of areas. And of course, some do not. But my point is, if we want to build a better nation, then it should be an inclusive approach. So is there a way where we can incorporate some of the recommendations or some of the policies in other manifestos into the ruling party manifesto? Like Rich said, or like Araba said, the NPP manifesto is 1.5 page bullet points, more or less things we've done and what we want to consolidate. Fine, but it lacks in other areas too. For example, if I compare it with the Ghani manifesto, he touches on something interesting, that's the digitalization of our education. Do we see that? So we see the free SHS, an interesting policy, very helpful policy, just like something we needed, fine. But as we give people the opportunity to expand to secondary education, what are we doing about the quality, not just in terms of the traditional way of giving education, but in terms of upgrading to a level where we will produce students who are competent and can be matched on any level globally? This is one thing I like about what Ghani said, because his whole focus is that we want to produce students, or we want to render education which is technologically, scientifically, and competency driven, in that no matter where you exit from the education cycle, you are capable to create your own opportunities. Let's not forget that not everybody will want to go as far as to the end of SHS or as far as to the end of universities or technical universities. Of course, like the cliche goes, the richest people we see around in the world right now do not have bachelor degrees. But what do they have? They have a strong foundation, a foundation on which they can build any opportunity that they want to build on. Like, my first fascination in Germany is that you see everyone reading a book. Because, for example, if you come to Germany, you would want to think that those who go to university is better than maybe those who do technical things, or maybe those who take other professions. But what I find across board is that no matter the level, everyone, like the ideas people share with you, the opportunities and their participation. Ghani also says it in his manifesto that it's all about the participation in nation building. It's all about decision making. So if we don't build a solid foundation, if we don't now concentrate more on building quality education with solid foundation, then if somebody decides to get out at any point of the university and doesn't, of the system, and doesn't go to the very end, then they are not competent. For me, it's sad to see that less than 20% of children who have at least 6 years of education cannot read per their proficiency level. So we can make a lot of noise. A lot of people are going to secondary school now. We have high literacy rate, but what is the quality? Where is the quality? So we should focus more on how to produce quality students. Just the few that we've done, deepen it, and then we can borrow ideas from all these manifestos at the end to build something inclusive on which we can build our nation, and not just focus on things that will bring the votes, like you build 200 schools so you can point to school buildings, or you brought a policy that's easily visible, tangible, that you can point to. But the things that will really move this nation forward, as we are talking about now, it's not just the tangible, it's not just the buildings, it's not just the visible policies. They are the quality assurance. They are the things that we need to put in there to transform the students. That will be my concluding remark.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Edmond Yeboah. So if I summarize what you said, you want to see an inclusive approach where whoever wins power is able to borrow brilliant ideas from other manifestos in order to move Ghana forward. So I come to you, Engineer Araba, and I know that you already touched on something I'm also passionate about, gender and education. So, but what do you expect you know, the next government to do for our educational system?
First of all, I would say that I expect us as a people or as parents to be intentional about education before I touch on the government. Because irrespective of where you are trained or giving formal education, parents have a big role to play. And so I would like that to be included in the discourse, that you cannot just relieve yourself as a parent for the nation to train your child for you, independent of your input. Sometimes it is actually the input from the home that determines the output in the school. And so this is something that parents should please, irrespective of the current economic situation or the kinds of jobs you find yourselves. If you can't do it yourself, make room for qualified people who can help you do that. And as a very hospitable country, there are so many volunteers who would gladly help you if you put in the prioritization as a parent. It is very important. Unfortunately, if I remember how I was raised, you could even go to extra studies in the neighbor's house, and all of you would do homework together. You unfortunately don't see that happening often these days. It's a very worrying factor. So we should blend the socio-cultural practice to the policy implementation to see fruitful results. Yes, Mr. Edmond was very, very right on point. I think now we have seen that the free SHS is possible. Per the NPP 2016 and 2020 manifestos. It wasn't a hoax. Yes, they said it, they've done it, thank you. But now, as he said, the quality coming out should now be, I didn't see that in the present manifesto. Yes, we have seen it's possible, the quantity can come, and now we are interested in the quality of products coming out. How are they going to do the product bit of it? And a few suggestions, if I may. I would recommend that back to technical education, the same way we prioritize affirmative action for gender inclusion, we should prioritize affirmative action for TVET and covert institutions. And like we had the tax rebate for teachers, for nurses and doctors during the pandemic. They didn't pay taxes, but we still continue to pay taxes. You can say that every current institution that employs these people also get a tax rebate based on the number of technical staff they have there, just to give a boost or incentive until the playing field becomes fair and equal. And until I hope that the one district, one factory, one district, one dam promise can merge a direct measure between government and academia on how to consistently solve the issue. The third one would be digitalization. It's very important. If nothing, if we have not learned anything from this pandemic, is that we're a globe, and that every country for the first time was left to solve its own problem. And I think that's when we saw the independence or sovereignty as a country in Ghana. It was a beautiful time to watch how we finally thought for ourselves, looked for local made solutions to solve our problems, like locally made sanitizers. Almost every technical institution had sanitizers made by students, sold by students for themselves. Nobody brought any extra funding or extra support from anywhere, but they managed to make that. We had gloves and masks all over the place from inside or within the region. And so it is not the fact that, yes, we have some sort of relief now. The numbers are not as terrible as they used to be. But that shows us that if we could do that then, what stops us from increasing that momentum on a global, on a national scalable level?
Thank you.
That means we can't do it. We just don't want to.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
That is what I have seen from that.
Thank you very much, Engineer Naraba Edu. Yes, we can. And I like one of the things you said, strengthening the role of parents and society, you know, in educating their own wards. I think one of the manifestos mentioned it. I'm not too sure whether it was the NDC's or Ghana's manifesto, where they want to restructure the role of parents-teacher association in also helping to improve quality.
Was Ghani.
It was Ghana's manifesto. Thank you. Yeah. So, Dr. Blee, you have the last bite, your concluding
Thank
remark.
you. Thank you. So I want to say that, like we said, inclusion has been a strong theme in our educational policies, but which has led to significant increases in enrollment. But enrollment is not the end in itself. Educational policies must improve learning, and not like Gani said, not to learn what to think, but how to think. If we are going to improve learning, I believe one of the key stakeholders are teachers. And I think that there should be a comprehensive policies on teacher training. We must go back to how we admit people into teacher training, and the whole teacher training sector must be looked at. I had a friend in Germany who teaches in basic school, and she said she had an exam, and she has a calculus exam. And so she was learning throughout the whole night. And I'm like, what's a basic school teacher going to do writing calculus exams? But it's all about the standards and the mindsets and the training you give to the teachers. Then they will impart that to the students. All right. If the teachers already don't know how to train people on why of the issue rather than the what of the topic, then we're not really going anywhere. What I would have also loved to see was performance measures. Ghani had in his manifesto key performance measures based on which he will he will be accountable for the policies he has proposed. That I did not see in the other manifestos. I think we need that. And also, if we are talking about quality education, then we cannot talk about quality education without talking about research. I think, again, Ghani was the one. In fact, if you look at Ghani's manifesto, you realize that his manifesto is based on research findings, and that's why it's very ambitious, But he also talked about devoting an amount of money within a specific period of years to research. And again, this is why the university community is not trusting the intentions of government when they talk of, for example, NPP promised National Research Fund. It's been 4 years, 4 budgets read, it was never mentioned. So you see the commitment to research itself. Germany spends, I think, about 50 billion euros on research a year. 50 billion, that's like huge economy, So research itself is a job creation avenue and an economy. So the government should not see research as they spending some money that maybe they may not need for other things, but it is what will back what we do. If we are going to industrialize, if we are going to even have quality education, we need to have educational researchers, people who are researching into educational policies, for us to know what works and what doesn't work. And those are the things that I would have loved to say. I think the other one has been mentioned already, that we need to have gender sensitive policies, and most of them did not touch on the issue of gender, which was interesting. Which was unfortunate for me, I think. But maybe they touched on gender issues on, for example, the NDC manifesto touches on gender issues under the topic of social protection. And so maybe that's why they did not. But I think the educational policies themselves must be gender sensitive and think of how to promote the improved enrollment. Of course, maybe the free SHS has increased the enrollment of girl child in school right now, and I think that's a good thing. Hopefully, I hope that the promises that they have made, or the proposals, will not just be mere talk to gain the attention of people and to get votes, but there will be commitment to really put this into practice and implementation.
Thank you very much. What a way to end the show for us, Dr. Blee. So we hope that these promises that have been put on paper will not just be, like they say, we need to walk the talk. There should be actions and not just words. Thank you very much, Edmond Yeboah. Thank you very much, Richard Blee. Thank you very much, Engineer Araba. Edu. Thank you also our fellow CEBSArians, those of you who sent in comments, questions. We are sorry we could not read all of them. In fact, time has again beaten us, but we hope to do better next time. I am Evans Apia Kisi, the host of CEBSAR Talk. Thank you, and see you next week, where we also take up another section and to interrogate the manifestos to see the way forward. And we think that we are building Ghana together. Thank you all. Have a lovely afternoon, evening, morning, wherever you are in the globe. Bye-bye.